Defense against the dark arts is the most cursed job at Hogwarts, with no professor lasting more than a year, so we will be ranking every professor from worst to best, based only on teaching ability. Forget morality, otherwise half of them would be in Azkaban. We're judging strictly on lesson quality and student success. Number 7. Amycus Carrow is dead last, because he is not really teaching defense against the dark arts at all. During the Death Eater takeover of Hogwarts, the subject is basically turned into dark arts, which is a pretty major issue if the class is supposed to help students survive dark magic rather than audition for it, and that immediately kills his ranking, because if your lesson plan is practice the Cruciatus Curse on other students, you are not educating. To be fair, he probably did teach some technically real dark magic, but again, that's the problem. This isn't a class about resisting evil. It's less defense against the dark arts and more welcome children. Today's topic is how to commit felonies. Even if some students may have learned dangerous spells under Carrow, none of it fits the actual purpose of the subject. Number 6. Dolores Umbridge. Umbridge is one of the worst teachers in the entire series, but she's especially awful as a DADA professor because she fundamentally refuses to teach the thing the class is supposed to teach. Her approach is all theory. No practical magic, no defensive spell work, no real preparation for danger. Just textbooks, ministry-approved talking points, and the educational philosophy of a woman who looked at Voldemort's return and thought, this would be a great time to make school even less useful, and that's what tanks her ranking, because no matter how neatly structured her lessons may have been on paper, defense against the dark arts is one subject where theory alone is basically useless. You do not survive a dark wizard by confidently reciting chapter 6 at him while he kills you. That's why Harry and the others are so frustrated. They understand what Umbridge doesn't, or refuses to admit. If danger is real, students need practical training. And Umbridge's class is designed specifically to prevent that, which means her teaching is not just bad, it's actively sabotaging the students' ability to protect themselves. The only reason she isn't last is because, technically, she is still teaching something related to the subject. Number 5. Gilderoy Lockhart is not evil in the same way Umbridge or Carrow are. He is just spectacularly, catastrophically incompetent. Lockhart's biggest problem is that he has no real mastery of the material he's teaching. His entire career is built on stolen accomplishments, fabricated expertise, and enough self-promotion to make a modern influencer blush. He doesn't teach defense against the dark arts so much as he teaches advanced autobiography, and his actual classroom performance is a disaster. He releases Cornish pixies into a room full of children and immediately loses control. He assigns students to read his books, which is less education and more hostage situation. And whenever genuine danger appears, he folds faster than a lawn chair in a hurricane. That said, he is not below Umbridge, because unlike Umbridge, Lockhart at least accidentally points students toward real dark creatures and incidents, even if mostly by lying about them. And unlike Carrow, he is still vaguely pretending to teach defense rather than outright abandoning the assignment. But let's be honest, Lockhart is basically what happens when Hogwarts hires a celebrity because his hair has better publicity than his resume. His lessons are shallow, chaotic, and mostly useful as a warning against confusing fame with competence, which to be fair is still a lesson, just not the one he meant to teach. Number 4. Quirrell is a weird one to rank because compared to some of the later train wrecks, he almost feels normal, which is a truly insane sentence to say about a man who had Voldemort attached to the back of his skull. But strictly on teaching and lesson material, Quirrell lands in the middle. Why? Because unlike Lockhart, Quirrell actually seems to know what he's talking about. He has studied dark creatures, travelled widely, and clearly has genuine subject knowledge. Even Hagrid mentions that Quirrell was brilliant, though he was supposedly never the same after taking time off to get practical experience. So in terms of raw knowledge, Quirrell is definitely not a fraud. The problem is that as a teacher, he does not leave much evidence of being particularly effective. His presence in class is timid, nervous, and not exactly inspiring. Harry's first impression of him is basically that he smells weird and seems fragile, which is not ideal when your job is teaching children how to face supernatural terror. And compared to the best teachers on this list, Quirrell doesn't stand out for great practical instruction, memorable lesson design, or visible student growth, so he ends up here. Number 3. Now this is where the ranking gets interesting, because Snape as a person is a whole separate disaster. But we are not ranking him on kindness, emotional stability, or whether he should ever be allowed to supervise teenagers without a second adult present. We are ranking him on teaching and lesson material, and by that standard, Snape is actually pretty strong. First, his subject knowledge is elite. This is a man with a deep understanding of dark magic, counter curses, potion making, spellcraft, and the mechanics of magical danger. If you want someone who genuinely understands how the dark arts work, Snape absolutely does. Second, his lessons tend to be serious and advanced. He does not treat the subject like entertainment, and he does not water it down into useless fluff. When Snape teaches, the material has weight. It feels like this is real knowledge that matters. That said, he doesn't crack the top two, because teaching is not just knowing things, it is communicating them well, and Snape has the warm classroom presence of a locked crypt. He intimidates students, singles people out, kills confidence, and turns learning into psychological trench warfare. If you are naturally gifted, you might thrive under him. If you are Neville Longbottom, you are basically taking the class while being hunted for sport. So Snape ranks high because the lesson material is strong and the subject knowledge is undeniable. But he ranks below the top two because being brilliant is not the same as being an effective teacher for most students. He teaches like someone who believes fear is the same thing as respect, which ironically is a very dark arts way to run a defense against the dark arts classroom. Number 2. This is where the list gets morally awkward, because if we are ranking people, Barty Crouch Jr. is obviously a lunatic criminal, impersonating a retired aura while manipulating children as part of a murder plot. But if we are ranking teaching and lesson material only, he is alarmingly good. Fake Moody gives students practical exposure to genuinely dangerous magic. He teaches them about the unforgivable curses. He demonstrates how dark magic actually works. He treats the subject like something real, immediate and threatening, which, in fairness, it absolutely is. And that matters. A lot of DADA teachers either make the subject theoretical, watered down, or ridiculous. Fake Moody does the opposite. His classroom feels alive, urgent, relevant. Students pay attention because, for once, the material doesn't feel like homework. It feels like survival. Even his paranoia, while medically concerning, actually helps the class. Constant vigilance is not a healthy personality, but it is a memorable teaching brand. Now, does he go too far? Absolutely. He uses illegal curses in front of students, traumatizes Neville, and has the educational ethics of a landmine. If this were a ranking of safe teaching practices, he would be buried under the castle. But on pure lesson material and effectiveness, he's near the top. Because the uncomfortable truth is that a lot of students probably learned more usable defensive knowledge from Fake Moody than from almost anyone else, which is deeply unfortunate but also very Hogwarts. Number 1. And number 1 is Remus Lupin. This one really isn't close. Lupin is the gold standard because he combines everything the others only have pieces of. He has real knowledge, practical lessons, smart pacing, clear explanations, and this is the rare part at Hogwarts. He actually understands students. His lessons are varied, hands-on, and directly useful. He teaches students how to handle real dark creatures like boggarts, redcaps, grindylows, kappas, and more. The material is practical without becoming reckless, dangerous enough to matter, but structured enough to learn from. That balance is exactly what makes him great. He also knows how to build confidence. His boggart lesson with Neville is the perfect example. Lupin isn't just teaching information, he's teaching students how to confront fear itself. That is what a defense against the dark arts teacher is supposed to do. And perhaps most importantly, Lupin adjusts to the class in front of him. He doesn't just dump knowledge onto students and expect them to survive it. He teaches at their level, earns their trust, and makes difficult material feel possible. That is real teaching. Harry learns a huge amount under Lupin, including the Patronus charm later on, which is arguably one of the single most useful defensive spells in the entire series. Lupin is the best because he actually does the job right. He teaches students how to defend themselves, not how to perform, not how to panic, not how to obey ministry propaganda, not how to commit felonies, just how to survive, which, for this class, is kind of the whole point.